Welcome to another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement. We're here at the News Forum where all voices matter. In our series of interviews with Conservative Party leadership contenders, we welcome to Boom and Bust the Honorable Jean Charest. He is a former federal cabinet minister, Premier of Quebec, and legal counsel. He'll be able to outline his ideas and policies for the leadership race and for Canada. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Tony.
I guess the first obvious question is, since the last time you were in federal politics, Canada has changed immeasurably, obviously, actually even since you have been Premier of Quebec. What are the major differences you've noticed since starting your leadership run?
Well, there's a number of things. I think there's a very broad concern about the aging of the population, the impact on productivity, on innovation, our ability to deal with the development of our economy. I'm thinking of the resource sector in particular, Tony, has been a very big story over the last 10 years. Canada is because Mr. Trudeau has created a reputation of a country that can't get things done, which is sad. And I think thinking of pipelines in particular, that is one of the big stories of the last few years, and one that's talked a lot about in this leadership race for good reason.
Yeah, and obviously, the way I've been putting it to some of my guests recently, Canada doesn't seem to work very well anymore. You mentioned pipelines. I think of Pearson, what's going on at Pearson Airport, infrastructure, not really befitting in a G7 country. So what needs to change in that regard?
Well, there's going to have to be a major rethinking of how the federal government operates. Pearson Airport's a very good example. The federal government doesn't operate that many things, Tony. And you know, because you and I have both been at the provincial and federal level. The provincial level is the governments that operate the country on a day-to-day basis. The feds have a more narrow field. Airport's one of them, and they can't run them. I mean, it's a shame, but it's also on Mr. Trudeau that he's not able to get it right. And then you look at the bigger projects like pipelines, that really is on Mr. Trudeau because of his unwillingness to support big projects. So I think this calls for a real change in leadership if we're actually going to get the federal government to play the role it should play as an enabler, able to get these projects realized and done, align the interests of the provinces and allow the country to grow its economy.
Obviously, the other sort of big elephant in the room is affordability, inflation, interest rates, housing, all of these affordability/economic issues. I'm sure you've heard it on the road when you've been traveling as a leadership candidate. How do you see these kinds of issues being resolved?
Well, on inflation, there is going to have to be a longer term approach because we're going to have some inflation with us for a while. And it means that we need to do a number of things to address it. Reduce spending because spending does feed inflation. Mr. Trudeau has been, a champion of spending, not of economic growth, but of spending and continues to be so. The other thing that we could do is reduce personal income taxes, which is what I've done in the past when we had the Great Recession of 08-09, and to a lot of effect because it allowed people to increase their disposable income.
Right.
So those are among the things that we need to look at to reduce inflation and to move pretty rapidly on it because it takes time. It takes time, Tony, between the moment you make a decision like that and to see it actually make its way through the economy.
Housing's been a topic that's been touched on by most of the leadership candidates. Any thoughts on that?
Well, everyone agrees that the inventory issue is front and center. We need more houses, period. Now, there's incentives that we should offer as a federal government to allow more construction. And that means incentivizing the municipalities through our infrastructure program. They move more rapidly to build, to permit, to do it more rapidly. But one thing that I would also add to that, Tony, is that we should also have a fast track for the trade workers who work in the construction industry so that we have the people we need to build the house. You talk to the unions who represent these workers, private sector workers right now, they'll tell you there are shortages that really, really mitigate their ability to build a house.
Well, let's talk about that after the break. I think that's a really important point, how our immigration system could serve the country better, particularly when we're dealing with some job shortages, some labor shortages. We're going to come back right after the break. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.